Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 55 of Fraternity Foodie. My name is Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. We call these segments Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like great food to bring people together. Today, we're going to be talking about career choices, something today's undergraduate students might be struggling with, but also mid-career employees who might be feeling stressed or experiencing burnout. So we have two guests today. The first one is Debbie Radish-Respess, an executive leadership coach located in the Nashville, Tennessee area. She is the founder of Invisible Horizons Coaching and Consulting, a global executive coaching firm. Debbie partners with executives and their leadership teams in various size organizations to accelerate their ability to lead in an inspiring way, always with a results-oriented and compassionate approach. Clients frequently cite Debbie's decades of operational experience, her deep knowledge of leadership, her fluency in strategy, operations, human resources, and her results-oriented, empathetic, and servant leadership-centered approach as the key reasons why she is so often entrusted as an executive coach and strategic business advisor. Debbie has a bachelor's degree in management and human relations, and she has her MBA from Trevecca Nazarene University. Also with us today is Ellen Howell. She is a life coach for teens, young adults, and their parents, also located in the Nashville, Tennessee area. She is the founder of Stepwise Coaching. Ellen uses an evidence-based approach to help her clients figure out what they want most, what's blocking them, and also how they can eliminate the blocks to create the life they dream of having. Through coaching, Ellen's clients feel heard and understood, and also excited about creating positive change in their lives. Ellen has received her Bachelor of Science in Nursing as well as her Master's in Education from Tennessee State University. Little known fact, Ellen is also a Rotarian with me at the Lebanon Noon Rotary Club. So we're always very happy to have Rotarians on our show. It is so great to have you both at our meeting today. Welcome to the show, Ellen and Debbie.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, it is. We're used to seeing each other on a weekly basis, so it's very unusual that we'd be getting together like this when we haven't seen each other for 3 months. But hey, this is the new world we're living in, I guess, right?
You know, it's changed a lot of things in everybody's lives right now.
Yeah, it sure has. But at least I'm happy that we have this time here together, and that way we can broadcast your message to a larger platform all over the country. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that we have here today. Let's start with Debbie. I have a question for Debbie. Here's the thing. Career choices are very stressful for the students that I work with all over the country, as well as a lot of the new professionals that are listening to this interview right now. Many students that I talk to, they fear that they might be on the wrong path. And they think to themselves, what if I don't even like the job that I'm going to school for? So how does a student or even a new professional know if they are on the right path for them?
Oh, that is such a great question. It really comes down to, is it bringing you joy? The first question that I always like to ask is, how happy are you with the decision you've made? We all have to do things that we don't like, Mike, but is it a dread every day getting up and going to class and hating the path that you're on? And when you really hate it, you're probably you're going in the wrong direction. I coach, Ellen and I both coach with behaviors and habits and mindset. And if we're not listening to ourselves, if we're not aware of how we're feeling about something, that can cause some pretty big stress and problems in our life. I know, as a quick little story, I went to school as an 18-year-old. I went to college for a year, absolutely despised it, hated everything about it. I was smart enough to go, okay, maybe college isn't for me. I went and got a real job, whatever that meant, right? But went back as an adult and got my MBA. I mean, that, so you're not stuck with where you are. It's a matter of just recognizing what you feel and doing something about it, taking a different step, talking to someone about it. Hey, I'm really not liking this path I'm on. What are my other options?
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I totally empathize with that as well. I mean, little known fact, after the first 6 months of me being at the University of Buffalo, I was miserable. I was completely miserable, so much so that I literally called my dad and said, that's it, I'm done. I'm coming home and I'm going to start my career without a college degree. Little known fact, right? And then, of course, eventually I got into my fraternity and things changed in terms of my support system. And then I was able to find my niche, but it was very difficult for me, especially at a school with 30,000 students. I just felt lost. I felt like a number in that sea of people, and it was a little bit overwhelming for me. So I certainly empathize with that story, and then obviously went back to go and get my master's degree as well. So things change, and I think it's important to just stay in tune with how you're feeling and what changes you need to make, and to not be afraid of making those changes in order to get what it is that you want out of life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, good. So Ellen, how can students or new professionals build long-term relationships with the people in their network that will ultimately lead to maybe an internship or a job down the road?
So there's a couple of things I'd like to say about that. So one thing is it's very wise to develop deep relationships with those in your family, within your inner sphere of influence, your close-knit friends, people in your class, those that you may share at your house of worship, wherever you're connected that way. But I think when you're looking for a place to work, when you want to find that perfect internship position, I think it's really important that you look outside those places. You might not be perfectly suited for the job that your Aunt Sally can connect you with, within that network, within your family, your close friends that you've grown up with. So it's really important that you broaden that scope, that you look outside the people that you're with all the time. So you need to meet other people. And there's ways to do that on campus, obviously. There's so many different campus opportunities to stretch yourself, to try something new, to try an intramural sports activity that you maybe have not participated in before, or go and observe and watch and sit on the sidelines and have fun with the people that are watching the sport. Then there's also other opportunities to look online now. Everybody's doing so much online on the internet, in the comfort of their own space. And it's not impossible to make connections in the comfort of your own space now, because we have the wonderful World Wide Web. So you're able to connect in ways that we never thought we would connect before. So look on meetup.com. That's how, Mike, you and I first met. You had posted on meetup.com about the Rotary Club, and I came to a Rotary meeting, and that's how we met, I think 3 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that allow you the opportunity to just stretch a little bit outside of your inner network.
Well, I'm certainly happy that I posted that day about our Rotary meeting and that you responded, but it's so true. On meetup.com, no matter what city you're in, there are events that are going on every day, many of them virtually now, of course. But so it really shouldn't stop anybody from going out and meeting new people. And I've made a lifetime of commitment to that networking process through Rotary and other organizations that I'm a part of. And even when I was in college, certainly my fraternity was a space for me to meet new people that were different from me, that were from different backgrounds than me. And I think that's really what helped to expand my network, not just only in my own organization, but other councils on campus, other fraternities and sororities that were different than mine. And I really, I hope that students take advantage of that time. And I think that really is one of the beauties of universities, is that you ultimately get to meet a lot of people that are different than you. And I think, especially for those that are going to be meeting in person in the fall and in the spring versus online, I think that's the benefit, is that you get to be in and around other people that are different from you, that you get to learn from, and maybe even have some opportunities to build a company with, for example, if you have complementary skills, right? So I think all of those things are things that I think about when I think about university students and even new professionals. You just have to commit yourself to networking in some way, in some fashion, every single week. And if you do that, I think new opportunities are going to come your way.
I think that's very true. If you are bold enough to take that first step, and sometimes that's a scary place for a young person to be.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I talk to, young people that I talk to, it's a frightening step to move beyond the comforts of home. And just going to a university away from home can be a big stretch for some. But the more you do something in small steps and are successful at it, your body begins and your mind begins to take those on as new habits. So you can
Yeah, I
help to
totally agree
stretch
with
and
that.
create new directions just by doing something over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, coming into college, I certainly didn't have tons of social skills or communication skills. I don't think I would rate them very high coming into college, but certainly leaving, when leading other student organizations on a college campus, I just did it on a weekly basis. So it felt very natural to do that out in the real world once I graduated. So look for those opportunities, work on public speaking and all of those social skills. It's so important to be able to develop those things, because ultimately you have to sell yourself no matter what your position is, even if it's not sales. In an interview, you got to sell yourself. So those skills are just so important. Oh. All right. So, Debbie, let's talk about emotional intelligence. This is a word that I think our audience really needs to understand a little bit further. So, what is emotional intelligence and why is that important on the job?
Yeah, so you guys really kind of touched on it. It's really about, you were talking about social skills. Emotional intelligence is really about self-awareness of your emotions, self-regulating your emotions, but also understanding those around you and how you're playing off of each other. It's bringing out empathy as well as the social skills. So when you look at emotional intelligence, it's really how are you showing up and how are you allowing maybe those emotions to drive behaviors, or how your behaviors are maybe in conflict with your emotions. So Ellen and I talk a lot about emotional intelligence because that is a skill it's a lifelong learning. We don't stop learning emotional intelligence at any age. The older you get, I think the more depth you have, but it never goes away. And life changes, life experiences and situations, careers change, families change. All of that influences how we react to it. And I like to look at the word, if you have really good emotional intelligence, you're going to respond out of love and compassion and empathy. When you have lower emotional intelligence, you're going to react more out of fear and anger. And I think there's a big difference between reacting and responding. So as young adults, what a great way to practice self-awareness, self-regulation. And again, like you said, you're on campus with such a diverse community. You do get to practice differently because you get to see how others are interacting or not interacting. And you can kind of hone some of those skills that you may not be so good at, which helps you in your career path. So I think emotional intelligence, it's a big buzzword, but it's always been and it's here to stay and it never goes away. But the deeper you can go with it, I think the better of a person you can be, especially from a leadership standpoint.
I love that answer, and it's so true. I mean, practicing those skills is critical, and I think a college campus is a great place to do that. And speaking of which, my next question, of course, is for Ellen. And this book is always literally, reach away. This is Servant Leadership by Robert Greenleaf, one of my favorite books that I read through in my master's program, and a great book if you haven't already read it. So Ellen, talk to me about servant leadership, another buzzword that we hear. Why is that an important concept for future leaders or current leaders to understand?
Well, I think that the concept of servant leadership is leading powerfully with authority, but also with a lot of empathy and grace. So you're really putting others' needs above your own. It's so important as a leader to not lead with an iron fist, to instead communicate, and just really understand where those that you're working with come from. And it's not just in leadership, like in your career, but leadership is something that you take with you in every day of your life. And so your everyday walk, you need to just meet others where they are and extend grace and empathy towards people in all paths.
And if I could just add to that, you know, that there's a direct correlation with emotional intelligence, right?
Correct.
With the empathy, the grace, and meeting people where they're at. That's where that emotional intelligence comes into play with servant leadership. And I didn't mean to take over that question, but I'm like, man, they're so knit together that when you get one right, it's very likely you're going to get the other one right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand.
That's a really, really important concept. And I think about, you know, leaders who lead with that iron fist, for example. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work. I mean, yes, you'll be able to get people to show up and they'll do the bare minimum. But ultimately, if you want to lead a movement, if you want to lead, you know, think about the really successful companies out there, they do it through servant leadership, because through servant leadership, they're able to capture the minds and the hearts of their employees. And if you capture the minds and the hearts of your employees, they're going to be willing to do extraordinary things for you and your organization.
I have an example for that as well.
Okay.
So I taught high school for a number of years and got the opportunity to lead the track team. I was a coach on the track team, and I knew nothing about running track. I was not a leader in track, but I cared deeply for my athletes, and they knew that. So they would run their tails off for me because they knew I cared about them. So as far as leadership goes, it wasn't leading with knowledge and intellect and ability. It was, luckily for me, leading with kindness and allowing them to have an adult in their world that cared about them deeply, and they wanted to impress me because they knew I loved them. So I think that's a big part of servant leadership.
It's a great example. It's perfect. So Debbie, I think that there are also some mid-career folks that are listening here today, and perhaps they're feeling a little bit stressed out, or perhaps they're experiencing burnout, which I think is very common for a lot of mid-career professionals. So what should you do in that kind of a scenario?
So I think right now, stress is at an all-time high, just in general, whether it be 14-year-old, 24-year-old, 34-year-old, 65-year-old. I mean, I think we're all feeling a type of pressure that we've just not felt before. And being burnt out in a job, as a coach, I always ask questions. You know, the first question is, well, what are you feeling? What does burnout mean to you? And then you dive a little deeper. Well, where are you feeling it? Is it the job? Is it the tasks that you're doing? Has the job changed? Has your boss changed? What's been going on in your life? You know, one of the fallacies of careers or going into a job is that, excuse me, you leave your life at the door, right? Your personal life at the door, and then you put on your career persona. And then when you walk out the door, you put on your life persona and you leave your career. That doesn't work. We have this work-life chemistry, and it's not balanced. And that's where it's so important to really, I love definitions. Defining what does burnout mean to you, because it's not the same with everybody else. And it also is making sure that when you're feeling that, and I've had that happen before. I've been in those jobs that, man, it just did not fit who I was. It didn't fit my behaviors. The culture was not what I wanted it to be. I wasn't feeling, I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have a passion for it. There wasn't alignment. And burnout can sometimes happen because of that, Mike. And I think it's important, again, to define what's making me feel like this. In what we do, you know, because again, we focus on the mindset and the habits and the behaviors. Where is that misaligned? Either, and then the question is, can it be aligned? And if not, it's time to start looking for something different, and that's better aligned with how I operate as a human. So yeah, so burnout's a big one, but you know, we all get stressed, and it's a matter of defining it and taking then and stepping back and just recognizing it. That, I think, one of the biggest steps is we jump from, I'm feeling this, and you're like, and all of a sudden you're like going in chaos, right? Let's just step back and go, let's recognize it. Let's just say, okay, this is it. This is what I'm feeling. Let me breathe. And now I can be in the right frame of mind to be able to think about what is that next step forward. And again, small steps. So I hope that answered the question for the audience and gave a little insight into kind of how I like to coach.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And as you talk about that work-life balance, I start thinking about kind of the way that we work today, which might be very different than the way that we worked before COVID-19. So for example, I'm working here all day in my office, but literally, 6 steps out that door is my family, right? And so usually, and Ellen knows this, if I'm working, let's say out in Lebanon, Tennessee, and I live in Franklin, Tennessee, that means that I have an hour to cool down from work to home, right? And then I walk in and I greet my family and I'm super excited to see them. But now it's 6 steps away. And so I don't have that time any longer to kind of cool down and get into that family mode and to have that work-life balance. So one of the things that's helped me is actually just doing some meditation after I'm done at my desk to kind of help with that transition into family life, and just sitting at my desk and meditating for 5 minutes. There's plenty of apps that help you do that. So, Calm is a big one that's out there. Headspace is a big one that's out there. The one that I use is even free. It's called My Life. And so it's a great way to kind of decompress a little bit and help with that transition from work to home life. So hopefully that's another nice little nugget for people to check out and help, because it is different than what we've been doing before.
We would recommend that you even do that throughout the day.
Yeah.
That there may be times where you just have reached the limit and you just need a break, just a brief break, and pulling up one of those apps and doing some meditation or even just breathing exercises, just to clear the head.
Yeah,
Great
that's
idea.
really good. That's excellent. So Ellen, I know that you do lots of work with teens and also young adults. So how should young adults be managing stressful relationships in their life right now?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I love talking about why I'm coaching and why I chose teens and young adults to work with. I am super strongly convicted and convinced that so many young people don't have a voice. They think, they ponder, they ruminate, they have ideas, and sometimes they'll blurt out things, but it's not really their true voice that they're expressing. Parents that I talk with think that their kids talk all the time or have no trouble expressing themselves. But the problem is the disconnect between what the kids have that they feel strongly about and the convictions that they hold that are reasonable and worthwhile, but they aren't getting those out. They're not able to express honest feelings and true convictions. And it breaks my heart. And it really does break my heart to know what they're carrying around inside, the weight of the world they feel like is on their shoulders. Now, those of us that are in our 40s and 50s, beyond, we have a long life of experience. We have lived through things, and we know that it's not the end of the world when things get rattled when you're younger. But when they're living in that moment, we need to, again, give them grace to be able to feel, speak, think, and express what they need to. Because if they don't, you run the risk of them bottling it all up and then just exploding in anger or in self-harm kinds of ways. So we want to really protect our young people from that painful side. And really, it's as simple as just giving them a platform to get their voice heard. So that's my pure purpose, is to allow them to have a voice.
That's fantastic.
And if they can't get a coach, I mean, obviously that's what we do. It's finding someone to talk with who really provides an unbiased atmosphere and an environment that is safe and confidential and free of judgment, because we want to talk. We want, we don't want someone to say, well, that's stupid, or you're an idiot, or, all that, again, negative. And it's, we have our own negative self-talk. We don't need someone else kind of reaffirming the non-fact, right?
Right. We need someone that's just going to be a calm listening ear with grace and empathy. And it can be their track coach. It could be someone, the parent of a friend. It could be a professor. It could be a number of people. It doesn't have to be a coach. Coaching and therapy are two completely different things. Some people definitely need to move more toward a therapeutic relationship. And then some are definitely would benefit from a coaching relationship.
Yeah, that's really good. And that's the one thing that I see with college students, time and time again, is that I really, really believe the ones that are very, very successful, the reason why is they're working with either a mentor, they're working with a coach, or maybe they're working with a therapist. But the people that have that outlet seem to be the most successful. And unfortunately, a lot of college students today, they're depending on their peers for advice. And I'm like, there's a limited amount of life experience that your peers have at this point. And so
Exactly.
realistically, I think find those mentors, find those coaches, find those therapists, and many of them are available to speak like we're speaking right now over video. So there really should be no reason why you can't link up with a coach or a mentor to make some of those things happen for you. And I just think it's so valuable. I know that was a big part of my upbringing when I was young. I always had family friends that were really successful, that were willing to pick up the phone and talk to me when I had a question. Or when I needed advice. And so I think, the service that you do right now is just so important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be able to do it, actually.
Yeah, that's great work. So Debbie, right now, let's talk a little bit about the job market. I think video interviews for jobs or internships are probably here for the long haul if you're in the job market right now. So my question to you is, how do you build confidence? How do you build authenticity? How do you build trust over video?
It's practice and practice and practice. I think a lot of younger kids, they're born with their phone in their hand. And they're used to video chatting, they're used to FaceTiming, they're used to doing things on social media. The difference with a video interview is who the audience is. So, the authenticity of who you need to be is learning to really understand who you are as a person. So let's go back to that emotional intelligence, that self-awareness, self-regulation, understanding social skills. You're not on Instagram, you're not on social media with your friends looking at this. This is a potential career opportunity. This is a potential boss. This might be a colleague. The audience is very different. And I do think that it's about knowing who your audience is and practicing. And that may be, hey, I'm gonna pick a friend and say, hey, I need you to pretend to be the boss of this company. You're gonna do some research. You're gonna understand how they tick, how that company ticks. And you're gonna ask that person to role play with you, because it really is about how are you gonna show up? How are you gonna sit properly? And you're gonna speak from the heart. Why do I want this job? Because it's aligned with my values. It's aligned with, there's a purpose and a passion. I have the skills to be able to do this. I have the excitement to want to be there. And I think just when you practice that and you become confident, the trust bubbles to the surface, because the person on the other side is going to be able to see the body language. You can tell with the eyes, you can tell, when someone is very distrustful, you can tell it, you can tell by body language. And so you want to practice. Why are you going for the job? Again, there's that alignment of behaviors and habits. Are you going for a job that you actually really want? Or are you going for a job just to get a job? It's going to come across however you're feeling about it. So that practice, and I say that because I'm not good with video. I've had to sit in front of a video recorder in order to be able to do my Zoom. You know, I put on my Zoom and I do a fake interview because I have to learn how to get comfortable when I'm uncomfortable. And I think practice matters, and learning who that audience is. So it's about speaking to the audience in a way that's going to connect with them. That's real. So, you know, I'm hoping that I'm doing that with your audience, and with you, Mike, because you're who I want to, that you're who I practice for, right? And that's what it comes down to. And that's not just for the younger adults, but even for older adults. I mean, think about people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who are looking for that career change. They've never had to do video interviews before. It's always been in person, right? Again, practice, 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 because it is it's just different not being able to be in the same room and being able to hear the nuances or listen to the hmms or see someone taking a note. It's just a very different experience. And to me, it was all about the practice and understanding who that audience was.
I love that answer. It's so 100% dead on. And the proof of it, of what you're talking about, Debbie, is, you know, just taking a look at some of the earlier podcasts that I did versus what some of the podcasts are right now. It's just a totally different level, and it's the same person, but it's all about the practice and the repetition. And if you get that practice and repetition down, then it becomes so much easier and such a better interview. So I felt that myself as a career professional. So certainly I think it's true for young professionals. Certainly I think it's true for students today. And I think the stories too, which is something that you hit on, is so important. When you're going through one of these video interviews, make sure that you have one of those success stories ready to tell. Ellen just modeled that for us with an earlier question, talking about when she was a track coach. She had a success story that was ready to go that she could bring out and tell that story. And by telling that story, number one, she knows it, right? She can repeat that because she knows that story. She knows what it feels like. But for me, as the audience hearing that, you know, suddenly I'm like, oh, wow, like I can really see how this applies to what it is that she does today. So that makes me like her even more by sharing that story. And I think all college students, young professionals, they have those stories. You just have to figure out, how does that apply to this job? And how can I use that to express to the person across the table, whether it's the CEO of the company or a future boss, to explain why it is that I'm here and why I think that this job or internship is a perfect match for my skills. So having that success story ready to go is so critical.
Yep, I agree. Yeah.
Really nice. So Ellen, teens and young adults right now that I speak to, many of them lack self-confidence, or maybe they have these negative thought patterns that are running in their heads. So what are some practical things that teens and young adults can do to boost their self-confidence?
Well, a couple of simple things, simple that, when I say simple, they're things that I've done. So of course they feel simple to me, kind of like the habit building that you were talking about. Journaling, very simple skill. I was speaking with a girl the other day, and she just, as soon as I mentioned journaling, she shut down. She said, oh no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, maybe, what does journaling mean to you? Define journaling. Like Debbie said earlier, give me a definition of what that is and why you're shutting down on that. She didn't want to take the habit of taking a book, opening it up, you know, dedicating this notebook to my journal and my thoughts, because she just didn't want to do that. I said, well, what if you were to just speak your journal? Maybe you have an app on your phone and you could just record thoughts. Maybe you could do a bullet journal instead of writing out prose, you know, long pages and pages of thoughts. So there are lots of ways to journal that you just have to explore different ways that you can do that. It may be as simple as just, you know, if you think of a word and just write the word down and leave that little slip of paper over to the side that you can return to later if you feel like you need to. Take a marker. This is another one I've done, is take a Sharpie marker and use it to write on your bathroom mirror. Because I tend to get my best thoughts, for some reason, early in the morning in the shower. And so when those come to you, have a Sharpie or a marker ready and just mark that on your bathroom mirror. And then you can take a picture of it if you want to carry it with you, or just leave it there for later. So journaling is one example. Another is just notice the positive. Just notice it. Be cognizant and look forward to looking for positive things that you're coming up against throughout the day. And just remind yourself, oh, well, that was a positive thing when it happens. So just take a second to remember the positive. And then always remember that these changes that we're looking for, start small. Don't expect to solve all the world's problems in one day. Just take a tiny step. Take the first bite. How do you eat the elephant in the room? One bite at a time. So you just take one little small step at a time to move forward.
Excellent advice. Perfect. So Debbie, I'm looking at some of these job reports right now on a daily basis. And I got to tell you, I mean, the unemployment numbers are horrific at this moment. And so there are so many people that are out of work right now. What advice do you have for people who are out of work? Is there a particular place they should be looking? What should they be doing right
So I do want to make sure that your audience knows we're not career counselors, that we're coaches. And we look at life in general. But contemplating on that, I really think it's important to focus on your current situation. Again, that self-awareness, okay? Because, in April, unemployment was at 14.7%. Prior to that, though, in February, it was at like 3.5%. So this is an anomaly, and we have to keep that in mind. This is not forever. This is not going to go on forever and ever. So if you're out of a job, just Google job openings. I mean, there's a million and one. You said job boards, right? I mean, there really are a lot of companies that are hiring. You may have to take a position at a company that you're not well suited for. Although we focus on behaviors and habits and mindsets, right now the right mindset may be, I've got to put food on the table, so I've got to take a job. That doesn't mean that you have to be stuck with that forever. It's still about, you can still look at your habits and go, but what is the next step? The first step right now might be just take a job. But the next step is, what do I want to do long term? And there's jobs out there. There's continuing education. This is not the time to become stagnant. We talked about practicing, right? So, hey, get in front of your Zoom and just practice interviewing skills, practice your stories. So there's so many things that people can be doing right now that this is not the time to just sit and wallow in self-pity. Now's the time to go, man, let me look at those opportunities, right? So not self-negative talk, it's going to be the positive talk of how can I use this for future success? What do I get to learn from right now that's going to help me in the long run? And how do I present that when I do have those job interviews? What do I talk about with my lessons learned? I didn't just sit here for 2 months and didn't do anything. Here's what I was able to do. Maybe I couldn't get a job, but here's what I did do. I did further my studies. I did take some online courses. I did enhance some skill sets. So there's a lot, I think, that can be done now.
You can even get into volunteer work.
Yeah.
If you have time and you don't need the income as badly, you can do some volunteer work that just reinforces the positive.
Yeah. And there's skills, a lot of skills that can happen out of volunteering. That's another servant leadership opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Right. And who knows what kind of long-term positions can come out of the volunteer work. So I found all kinds of professional opportunities through my volunteer work, let's say with Rotary, for example, and other organizations like that. So you never know where these things are going to lead. So I 100% agree with you. Maybe it's not exactly ideal of a position, but hey, you know what, if you can get some new skills out of it, if you can get some new references and testimonials out of it, if you can get some recommendations for jobs or internships out of it, you just never know where that's going to go. And ultimately, I think it's going to lead to what you're most passionate about, somewhere down the road, right? That's really good. Now, Ellen, I know both of you and Debbie, you guys both use this thing called the Shadowmatch assessment. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about the Shadowmatch assessment and why is that an important tool for you?
So Shadowmatch is different than any other assessment I've ever seen. Everyone's familiar with the Enneagram right now. You've probably heard of Myers-Briggs, the DISC assessment, all of those different assessment tools. Those are looking at your strengths and weaknesses or your personality traits. That's basically what those are doing. Shadowmatch is different. It's the behavioral, scientific, evidence-based product that takes a look at your personal behavioral habits, the way your brain is currently wired. So your brain, behavioral science knows your brain has your habit brain and then you have your conscious brain. So your habit brain are those grooves in your brain that have formed over time based on the repeated actions that you've taken from birth, things that you've learned over time that have dug deeper grooves into your brain. So when you're going to respond to something or react to something, you have this normal propensity that your particular person will work. For instance, you've heard of introvert and extrovert. So some people feel like they're introverted or extroverted. What we believe with Shadowmatch is that you have a propensity to work more with people or a propensity to work more as an individual. And those propensities are learned behaviors that can be changed with work. So not only does the Shadowmatch assessment look at 19 different behavioral characteristics that all humans have, it ranks them in the person that takes the quiz on which ones are your strengths or stronger habits, and which of these habits do you have in a much softer way. So if I have a propensity to work with people, and I've chosen a career that is very isolated and independent, and I work in a cubicle and I don't really have a lot of interaction with others, that's going to tax my conscious brain, because my habit brain is to want to work with people. But instead, I'm in a position where I need to work alone. So I have to consciously put forth effort to do that. And if you've ever studied the Pomodoro effect or any of those study habit things that say that your brain, we know that our brain can only manage conscious work for about 20 minutes. And then our brain is overexhausted and tired and needs a break. And it takes about a 15-minute break before your brain can re-engage. So if you're in a career field that's causing you to have to engage your brain outside of its normal habit, it's going to cause you stress and overwhelm and burnout and those things that you talked about earlier. So what Shadowmatch and the career assessment what we want to use that to help you with is to find out where do your habits lie so that you can align a career field with those proper habits for you, so that you don't choose a job that's going to be cubicle based. If you are have a habit for dealing in the routine, routine is comfortable for you, you like a routine, you probably don't want to do something that's very creative and very outside the routine. You need to make sure you focus on a career that follows your personal habits. But the other glory in the Shadowmatch report and the career report are, in addition to showing you where you are with those habits, it shows you how you can grow in your soft habits. So it gives professional development opportunities built into the program that you can work over about a 6-month period to strengthen your soft habits so that you'll have those to pull on when you need them. And it also pinpoints those radical habits that you never even have to think about, and teaches you how to temper those back down so that if you are in a situation working, you're in a radical habit mindset and you're working with others that have a softer habit, that can cause conflict. And this is not only in the workplace, it also affects your personal life. There's a relationship report within Shadowmatch. So you can look at your relationship as a student with your professors. You can look at your relationship between parent and child, between husband and wife, between coworkers and other coworkers. There's different relationship reports that are all connected in the Shadowmatch realm, that it's just such a rich tool that has so many moving parts that can benefit you in so many different ways.
Wow, I learned something new every single interview, and that is certainly something that I learned today. So I appreciate you letting us know about the Shadowmatch tool. Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with some of the others that are out there. I've certainly taken almost every single one, and it's helpful for me to know who I am, so that way I understand how I can work with others in a better way.
Right.
And so Shadowmatch certainly seems like another great tool for us to check out. That sounds really good. All right,
Yeah,
well, great.
it might just real quick is Ellen and I are doing a webinar next week, Tuesday, actually, with the career report for teens and young adults. And it's really to help get get this information out there to help them identify what path do I want to take while I'm setting up my college choices for next year or my career choices. So I really want to make sure that we, you know, again, because we're so passionate about behaviors and habits, this is such an ideal time to really hone in on those, to be able to help all adults, whether they be the teens and young adults up through the 65-year-olds who are looking to, you know, what do I want to do after retirement, right? And what does that even look like? That Shadowmatch just is such a robust tool that I don't want to miss the opportunity to be able to offer that to your audience.
I love that. So let's talk about that. Let's say our audience wants to check out that webinar. Where should they go in order to check that out on Tuesday?
So they can go directly to invisiblehorizonscoaching.com, and it's right at the top of my website that will take them to a landing page. And unfortunately, the landing page is a massively long one, so we are not going to be able to share that with your audience because I don't know all the numbers that are associated with it. But invisiblehorizonscoaching.com, and they can find it there.
Exactly.
That sounds really good. And feel free to use tinyurl.com. That way you can get whatever link you want with all those numbers and letters and just shorten it down to something that people can actually remember.
We haven't done that yet. It's on our to-do list.
tinyurl.com for anybody out there, because I'm frustrated with the same thing. I got all kinds of Zooms and other webinars going on, and that's the only way that I can remember where to send people, because I'm like, I don't know, it's all these letters and numbers. Who knows? So we love great food here at Fraternity Foodie. So I'm really curious, what are your favorite restaurants in Nashville? Ellen, where do you go to eat in Nashville?
So I'm going to divert out of Nashville and go to Murfreesboro.
All right.
Because I know Murfreesboro is a college town. Some of your listeners might be down at MTSU.
Sure.
So I don't know if you've ever been to Jack Brown's Burgers and Brews. Have you been there?
I have not yet, but I might go today.
All right. So if you like a good hamburger, they only use either Kobe beef, Angus beef, Wagyu beef, really quality meat, and they're not skimpy on the size of their burgers. Everything is handcrafted, and they don't use lettuce and tomato for a reason. They don't put any of that watered, in their words, watered down junk on a burger. It's beef, cheese, big thick slices of applewood smoked bacon. So if you're vegan, you're not going to enjoy this restaurant at all. It has the most amazing flavors. They have one called the Greg Brady, that, if you remember the Brady Bunch.
Sure.
And it has I think it's Wagyu beef, it may be Kobe beef, and mac and cheese and potato chips on a burger. Really interesting, but they're all delicious. Home-cut fries, home-cut sweet potato fries, and over 100 different craft beers available for those that are 21 and over.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. I'm getting ready to go. I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna go.
It's on the square. It's on the square in Murfreesboro.
That sounds fantastic. What about you, Debbie? Where are you going to eat these days?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring it back to Lebanon, and a big shout out to the Snow White Drive-In. That it's been here since the 1950s, and it's a typical drive-in. Like, I wish the waitresses would be on roller skates, because it's that type of it's just that type of a place. It's such a Lebanon staple that if it's a great date place, and their shakes, their milkshakes are absolutely to die for. So that's my choice today.
There you go. That's fantastic. I have definitely been to Snow White, and it is fantastic. So I'm with you there, and it's delicious. So I'm sure they're going to appreciate the shout out today. That's great. That's awesome. So is there anywhere else that our listeners should go in order to, find you, whether it be on social media or websites, if they have more questions to ask?
Absolutely. So Stepwise Coaching is the name of my business that you mentioned at the beginning. So that's all one word, stepwisecoaching.com. The website's under construction, but it should be up in the next couple of days. I am on Instagram as Coach Ellen Howell. I'm on Twitter, also Coach Ellen Howell. I'm on Facebook as Stepwise Coaching. So I'm on all the social media outlets that any of my listeners would want to find me on.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And all of my stuff is under Debbie. It's Debbie Radish-Respess for Facebook and for LinkedIn. Those are the only two that I go to at this point, because I got her to go on all the other social media sites.
I live on them.
You guys make a good team. So I appreciate you guys being here with us today. I've certainly learned a lot, just like I do in every single interview that I do. So if you guys found some value in this particular interview, please share this along with your network so that way more people can meet Debbie and Ellen and some of the work that they're doing with young adults and even mid-career professionals. So we certainly appreciate all of your time here today. And I say thank you. Our audience, I'm sure, has learned a lot. So it was great spending some time with you guys today.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, Mike.
I appreciate your time so much.
Hey, it's my pleasure. You guys are good people doing good work. So that's my job, is to promote those types of people to my audience. So I really appreciate that. Certainly learned a lot. And thank you so much to our listeners. Thank you for being here. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now.